Today I'd like to talk about the 2004, or maybe it was 2003, somewhere in that range of years, the movie Mystic River. I remember at the time this movie came out, it was, sort of from a Oscar, like Hollywood Oscar bait kind of perspective, it was the shit. Directed by Clint Eastwood, who was well-respected director at the time. Really not so much now, not as he approaches his 100th year on Earth. The guy's really old. He was old back then, but he was kind of enjoying a vogue back then, and I don't know, it was just, I think my impression was that it got nominated, not that I usually follow Oscar stuff, but that was just my impression. This was like the Oscar movie, the movie that everyone in the Academy fell all over themselves wanting to nominate. Although with that said, I don't know how many nominations it got, and I don't particularly care. I'm just talking about the overall allure of the movie at the time. But since then, it's kind of been forgotten. It's not really talked about very much anymore. Now, I went back and watched it because I was interested to see how it would impact me now. I remember when I saw it at the time, I sort of thought, I was of two minds about it. I thought, on the one hand, this is a pretty, interesting crime drama / procedural, cop procedural film based on a book, I guess. Interesting setting, the politics of inner city Boston, which was explored also a few years later in The Departed, probably more famously and probably more successfully. So on the one hand, I enjoyed those things about it, and the mystery aspect of it. On the other hand, there was this kind of overcooked melodrama aspect. You had, actor like Sean Penn, who I like as an actor. I think he's an asshole in life, obviously. I don't know who would even argue that point. But as an actor, I do enjoy his intensity, but I think it can get a little much, and he was sort of allowed to go a little around the bend in his performance in this movie. So I was of two minds about it at the time. When I watched it recently, with my newfound knowledge, my newfound interest / obsession with pedogate, I guess that's the best shorthand term that one can use to talk about it. Just the frequent, if not systemic, sexual exploitation of children by the rich and powerful entities and and institutions. I didn't really think in those terms in 2003 and 2004. That hadn't really entered my consciousness yet. But when I rewatched Mystic River, that sort of took front and center for me, because the movie, the center point of the movie, the origin point of all of the tragedy and all of the drama, is an early scene where the three primary male characters are just being boys, playing around like boys. In a way, it reminds me of the movie Sleepers in this sense, from a few years earlier, which was just about these boys, just sort of mischievous, fun-loving young guys. Wouldn't hurt a fly, but just kind of got into harmless trouble, but it kind of got out of hand, and then they get exposed to this terrible abuse that changes them forever. Well, the same thing happens at the very beginning of Mystic River. You see, and it's a powerful scene. You see these three boys just doing something harmless. They're just there hanging out, and they're on this. They're on a street in a neighborhood in Boston, and the cement hasn't dried on the sidewalk, so they're going to write their names in to the cement. And then this car pulls up, and this man gets out of the car, and he's very threatening towards them, and very he treats them like they were guilty of something really egregious, and he's it's not really known who this man is, but of course cement companies are, as I understand it, notorious for being mob affiliated, and this man obviously has some deep connections with the city, and so forth. So I can't remember exactly how it happens or why it happens, but for some reason one of the boys, I think because he's like the other two are right near their homes, but one of the boys lives a few blocks away. So using this sort of intimidating authoritarian manipulation, the man tells this one boy that he needs to come with them, and he's going to drive the boy to his parents' house, where they're going to tell his mother what he did, when it was really it was nothing. He was just writing in the cement. It's not even a crime, I don't think. So he gets in the car, and of course it turns out that they don't take him to their mother's house, or to his mother's house, to his parents' house. They drive him away and molest him, and there's another man in the car in the front seat who very conspicuously shows off a bishop ring, meaning he's a bishop in the Catholic Church. So you got this shady, mobster type guy, who's also affiliated with the cement workers and, affiliated with the city, driving together with this bishop, and this bishop of the church, and they take this kid away and, of course, molest him for days. And he has to run away, and he escapes eventually, but he's never the same. And there's an offhand remark that one of the adults makes after he gets back, where someone comments that he's damaged goods, which is really, that's a way you should not talk. You should not talk that way about a child. I think it was meant to be a sort of gut level, a blow to the gut to hear somebody refer to him like that. But it's there's just a sort of a kind of casual cruelty to making an observation like that. None of us are damaged goods. We're not goods. We're people. We're created in the image and likeness of God. So, anyway, this scene at the very beginning ends up forming the backdrop to what happens later, which is when all of the men are old. One of them's now a cop. One of them's now a store owner, but also kind of kind of has some gangland ties. One gathers. And the other one, the one who got molested, is just this kind of eccentric, damaged man who just never seems to have recovered from the ordeal that he went through as a boy. but who now somehow, for some reason, and I don't know how believable this is, but he's actually married and has a son himself. So things play out. I don't want to necessarily talk too much about, the plot of the movie itself. I do think that I still think that it's worth seeing, in spite of the melodrama, in spite of some parts that are just, over the top, that are sort of manipulative, that are sort of, that seem overblown, overcooked, particularly involving Sean Penn's character. But I think what stays with me now is the sort of crypto message of this movie / book, if it was, if it's based on a book, and how the intervention of the depraved power elite into these boys' lives is what set everything in motion and made them, it was what messed with all of their heads, really. It mostly messed with the head of the boy who got molested, but the other two were also deeply affected as well. And there's a scene near the end where Kevin Bacon's character says, I think sometimes maybe we all were taken away in that car, and all of this, everything that we're experiencing now is just the fantasy that we're creating, trying to get out of, trying to disassociate from being, locked in this depraved man's basement and getting perpetually abused by him. And that him saying that, really kind of throws the audience for a loop. Kind of makes us wonder for a second. Could that, is that really maybe what's going on? Is this, is none of this real? Now, I don't think that's really the case, but the fact that this character even introduces that point, or introduces that possibility, says something about where all their mindsets are. And again, it was the intervention of the depraved power elite in their lives. This group, this claque of people, whether it's local, in this case, it's not. We're not talking about big national figures or those working for the DNC or the RNC or in Washington D.C. or anything like that. It's just, in this case, it's local, figures in Boston, but still who are representative of power, and the depravity of power. Why after with when you're these guys and you've got the world at your the world's basically at your disposal. You can do what you want. Why not get 25-year-old girls? Why not? Why not get them and just sleep with a bunch of them? Why does it have to be 12, 13-year-old boys, 14-year-old boys, however old this kid was when it happened? And so it's in retrospect, a really sobering kind of a crypto message, because it's something that happens at the very beginning, and they never really come back to it. But there's never really any explanation for it, and one gathers that it's these aren't just two bad apples, these men who molested this boy, even though he got away and survived, and even though they were caught, the fact that they were able to operate just out in the open like this and just drive around and intimidate little kids and manipulate them into getting into their car because they seem to be authority figures. Very, very sobering presentation of the depravity of power. So that's it. That's my review. Some 15, 16 years later, 17 years later, of Mystic River. Anybody else who's seen it, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts. If you haven't seen it, again, I think it's worth a watch, with the caveats that I have included here in this review. Thanks for watching. My name's Andy Nowicki. You can check out my work at altrightnovelist.com.